From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend, we are on the road in central Missouri at the Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture. And here's what's ahead over the next 60 minutes. Chaos in the cattle markets, and there's a political battle right at the center of the plate.
There is no doubt that these policy decisions are making a big impact on the marketplace. And they also just increase a lot of uncertainty and volatility in the industry.
It may be a loud fight in Washington, but is the U.S. cattle herd actually quietly getting smaller?
We're on a completely different, slow-paced path, probably the slowest rebuild in history.
Why some economists say the highs in the cattle market may not be done yet. Plus, USDA's first yield update since the government shutdown will tell you where the biggest surprises showed up. And later, he first started as a first-generation farmer. Now, he's Missouri's governor. Our exclusive conversation with Mike Kehoe right here at the Missouri Governor's Conference on Agriculture. Now for the news. For the first time since the government shutdown went into effect, USDA has released new supply and demand numbers. And there was a lot to unpack since these were the first new numbers from the agency since September 12th. USDA's latest report slightly trimming yield expectations for several major crops. Corn is now pegged at 186 bushels per acre, slightly lower than the previous projection of 186.7. That cut also pulls production down by 62 million bushels. Soybeans seeing a half a bushel cut with yield projections now at 53 bushels per acre. That caused USDA's soybean production estimate to slip to 4.3 billion bushels. But cotton moving in the opposite direction. USDA raising its yield nearly 7%. Boosting production to more than 14 million bales. Wheat and cotton seeing higher yield outlooks, while corn, rice, and soybeans came in lower, shifting total supplies and ending stocks across the board.
There's some awfully good corn out there this year. Corn that performed better than what you would expect with the kind of weather that we had, but there was also some train wrecks and a lot of growers that indicated to us their crop was good. It just wasn't quite as good as a year ago. So we were shocked to see a 186 yield.
And now the longest U.S. government shutdown in history is over. President Trump signing legislation ending the 43-day closure. Federal workers were back on the job Thursday. However, it could still take days or even weeks for those workers to clear out backlogs. But here's the latest on what we know will happen. The bill fully funds USDA for fiscal 2026. That means it is effectively insulated from any further shutdowns until next September 30th. The plan also extends programs under the 2018 Farm Bill until the same date. It would also provide $30 billion in funding for the Commodity Credit Corporation. In order to fund commodity and conservation payments for FSA, there is $10 billion for farm loans.
This package would reauthorize major ag programs through all of fiscal year 2026, which helps ensure continuity for crop insurance, risk management tools, and also pluses up and restores the Commodity Credit Corporation's funding, which is obviously very important if the administration plans to use CCC funds to pay for some sort of market facilitation program like they did in the first Trump administration.
And for SNAP benefits, the government said most states got the funds to distribute within 24 hours. Well, the U.S. Attorney General says a probe is underway into foreign-owned meat-packing companies. It comes after President Trump asked the Department of Justice to immediately begin an investigation into the packers, saying they are driving up the price of beef through what they call illicit collusion, price fixing, and price manipulation. Concentration in the processing sector has long been a hot-button issue for cattle producers. Currently, 80% of the U.S. beef packing industry is owned by 4 entities. You'll remember the DOJ investigated packers in 2019 after the Holcomb, Kansas plant fire and during COVID, when consumers paid record beef prices and producers received record low cattle prices. We'll take a deeper dive, though, into this in our Farm Journal report and also in our roundtable discussions. Well, the trade truce between the U.S. and China seems to have stalled when it comes to Beijing's buys of U.S. soybeans. Bloomberg reporting that traders now say they see no new orders coming in, which is casting doubt on the agricultural commitments deal that was recently reached between the two countries. According to market observers, the pause is raising questions about whether China will follow through on those purchases targets we've been telling you about. However, analysts point out that China is already carrying a large soybean surplus, and crush margins for processors remain negative. Plus, imports from Brazil remain cost competitive because Brazilian beans right now are cheaper. That's it for the news. Well, as we told you at the top of the show, President Trump is calling for an investigation into the biggest meat packers. But cattle and beef prices gained national attention about 3 weeks ago. Michelle Rook looks into the chaos in the cattle market next.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by Pioneer. Plant with confidence. Plant the #1 corn and soybean seed in the U.S. Pioneer.